Welcome back, I'm so glad you're here. Python 3.10 was just released and it has some amazing features. It has improved error handling and type handling. Additionally, it now has a version of switch statements which they call match case. Now let's take a look at these improvements. In order to download Python 3.10 or the latest version of Python, go to python.org and under downloads you'll see the latest version. Let's first go over error handling, and I'll create a dictionary here, and I'll set 1 equal to A and 2 equal to B, but I won't set a value for 3. So in Python 3.9, if I were to run this, it would give a syntax error, and it just says invalid syntax, but we know that 3 has no value, and Python 3.10 solves this. So I'm gonna run this using Python 3.10, which I already have installed, and I'm gonna do Python 3.10 and then the file name, which is error handling 310.py. And this tells us after the key 3 it expected a value because it's a dictionary. So this is a lot more helpful than a syntax error. So I'm going to put C here for the value, but let's say I forget to close the dictionary. So I'm going to run this using Python 3.9, and it will give me a syntax error in the file, so I really don't know what this is. However, if I were to use Python 3.10, it would say that the dictionary was never closed. So Python 3.10's error handling is much better than 3.9, and it makes it much easier to debug your programs. Now let's move on to the next feature that's improved, which is type handling. I'm gonna create a function that cubes a number, and it's gonna have one parameter x. If I wanted multiple types, I would have to import the typing module if I was using Python 3.9. However, if I want x to be an integer or a float, I just have to do this symbol here, and then let's say it's going to return an integer or a float, so I'll do the same thing here. So I'll just return x to the power of 3, and then I want to print this, so let's print cubes of 3.1. Using Python 3.9, it does not recognize it at all, which makes sense. But now let's use Python 3.10. And when I run this works. We see we get a slight rounding error, but we could just modify the function to have it round to, I don't know, 5 decimal places, and that would fix that. But the point of this is to show that you can now have multiple types and type handling with Python 3.10. Now let's move on to the last feature called match case. If you're familiar with other programming languages, they have switch statements, and you may be wondering why doesn't Python have them? Well, now with Python 3.10 they have something very similar called the match case. So I'm gonna get an integer from the user and assign this to x. Then I'm gonna do match. So I'll do match x, and then let's say the user entered 1, I'm gonna then print hello. If the user entered 2, I'm gonna print world and otherwise. So case, and it's an underscore here, that's the default case. So I'm gonna print didn't enter 1 or 2. If you're familiar with switch statements, most programming languages have you insert a break under each one. So under case 1, after you print hello, it would break the switch statement. But this is slightly different. It's called match case. So in Python, there are no break statements. And we see here, it's highlighted in red, and it says it requires 3.10 or newer. So for example, if I run this with Python 3.9, it's going to give us an error because it doesn't know what match is. However, when I run this with Python 3.10, it will work, and I'll enter an integer 4, and that's not 1 or 2. Now I'll run this again, and I'll enter 1, and it says hello. Because that's the case for 1, it will display hello. So these are some of the key new features in Python 3.10. If you want to know some of the more subtle features, feel free to browse through the documentation, which will be attached in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow along with this video series by subscribing and hitting the notification bell, or by clicking on the next video, so that you can expand your knowledge about Python. And as always, I can't wait to see you next time.